Okay, this is a podcast series that I am excited to bring you, and this is the first episode. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the studio and we're going to listen to a conversation that I had with Tornincasa. Now, I do let him introduce himself, but just give you a little bit of prep work before you get into the podcast episode. Ty is not only a union member, he is also a licensed financial professional. He's going to bring a lot to this conversation and this series. I'm really excited about where this series is going to go and the resource that it will create for anybody that is looking for information when it comes to pensions, when it comes to annuities, when it comes to just basic finances and everything in between. We're going to have multiple conversations about all of this. But Ty brings his A game, not just to this podcast episode, but to all the other ones that are coming, because he's got skin in the game. He's been in the field. He knows what it's like to be out there. And he also has, the other foot in the camp is in the finance world. He navigates that on a daily basis. So, he brings a great balance to this. And I'm excited to bring you this conversation and many more going forward. So, that's what you have to look forward to. Let's go ahead and jump into this podcast episode and have a listen to my conversation with Ty Tornincasa.
It's been, so I haven't posted really anything on the podcast for a long time. And I don't know if we've talked about this or not, if I kind of alluded to it, but like I'm coming up on the 1 year anniversary of my son passing away. So that understandably, right? That stuff takes the wind out of your sails. So what I did was I posted a podcast episode this morning and, hey, look, here's why I stopped doing the podcast took a break, if you will. Here's, what we can kind of look forward to. Alluded to, obviously, this, let's say, ongoing conversations that we're looking to have with the financial realm. And so I'm really looking forward because I think there's a lot of value that we can bring a lot of tradesmen so they can sit and have, because when you think about it, right, they're just over here, you're going to work every day, you know what I mean? If it's feast or famine, so you're working a lot and, you're having to navigate through traffic and all that bull crap. And then you got your family to take care of when you get home and you got, their issues or whatever. And there's so much information that's out there for their daily life. And then it's like, okay, well, how they don't even really have a lot of time to think about their finances. Right. And so it's one of those things that just gets swept under the rug until too much time has passed by. Right. And so it's one of the reasons why, I'm very, I don't think we met by accident. You know what I mean? And, so I'm excited about what we could potentially create here. So, all right, just starting out, let's go ahead and give out a basic introduction, right? Who you are, because this podcast episode here is going to be you telling your story. We're going to continue on. We're going to be talking about a multitude of things, but today or tonight for us, we're gonna explore your story. We're gonna build that foundation, and then from there rise up. So let's give a brief explanation, introduction to who you are and how how you got into the game, how you got into the trades.
Yeah. So again, appreciate you for having me. And I don't believe we met, by accident either. So definitely looking forward to really working with you. And I think we're on the same page on a lot of things and really about the education. So just kind of start from the beginning. My story is I'm a third generation local and iron worker out of Chicago. Um, I pride myself on being a blue collar worker, and I still like working with my hands today. But back in 2005, as an apprentice, I ended up falling 4 stories at McCormick Place. So as you can imagine, that changed a lot. From even just your perspective on life. I was a 23-year-old kid, just thinking, everything, the whole world ahead of you, right? And that's the last thing you're going to think is that you're going to get hurt just out of nowhere, and it happened so quick too. So, basically at that time, I was still finishing my undergrad, and I was just about done. Uh, and I was doing some night school through like Purdue, and you know, after I fell and I got hurt, it just my life changed. I was like, well, what am I going to do with my life? You're dealing with injuries. You're dealing like, well, in your 20s, you make your name for yourself, you build your career, all this other stuff. Like, how am I going to be impacted by this? And it got me thinking. Like, here I am, uh, pretty much finishing up my undergrad degree. I'm supposed to be educated, but I didn't have a clue on anything. And it got me really thinking. Like, well, if I feel this way, most of our members go straight from high school into the trades. So they got to be in the same boat I am and maybe even worse off, right? So that's when I dedicated myself to going back and really helping, blue collar union workers by educating them as a financial advisor. So that's what brings me here today. I'm big on just coaching and teaching and trying to educate people. And when I work with my clients, that's the approach I take. So I just think that we have a lot of smart people that are in the trades. It's just lack of exposure to it. So, again, my approach is just education. And by the end of it, they know what they do. They can make the best decision for themselves.
You said there's a whole lot that I want to touch on, but the most recent one was lack of exposure.
Yep.
So is it safe to say then that what we're effectively dealing with is a lack of resources for individuals to be able to go and find information on, you know, let's say on their finances on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis, because that's how we live, and retirement as well. Like, is that safe to say?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's not even just trade people. It's, our country as a whole. Like, these are things that we should be teaching in high school.
Mhm,
Basic investing, how to,
mhm.
budget, how to do all these other things that are really important in real life. And, it's so easy to fall behind, just starting off a life of, trying to purchase a vehicle, a home, if you get married and you have kids. And, where is the courses on that? Nobody teaches you how to manage that, right? So, just trying to work with people and, but even more so in our trades, we get caught up and we're in there, and uh, sometimes it's tough to even do additional research for ourselves, because if you're out there working 6 10s, 7 12s, or whatever some of our people do, like by the time you get home you're exhausted. Like, how so, I feel like a lot of our union members, they get the trailer talk education, is how I refer to it. So you get the one old timer that, speaks louder than everyone. And, he's confident whether if he's right or wrong. And then the rest of the group, they, they, they follow in his footsteps. Right. So, just getting out there and then trying to get to people early too. So they have the right knowledge, in their back pocket, and they can implement that as they need.
Yeah. Trailer talk, that's hilarious. It's, yeah, you know what? That for whatever reason, and, as I, kind of explore things, I come to find out that the people that seem to be the loudest seem to get listened to the most, and they also seem to be the ones who are the most erroneous. And they're talking, and you're like, "No, that's not true. That's not true either. You're speaking from feelings and not from, fact," or and it's like, dude, w you want to talk, take the time to learn something so that what you're saying actually makes sense, right? Because it's just so frustrating. So, totally understand that, because there's so many guys that, over the course of my 23, 24 years, whatever it is, where people do the exact thing, where they have something to say, and it's, "All right, man, you can say whatever you want, but you're completely wrong in what you're saying." And so it's like, dude, like, just and the thing that's like, it's one thing if it's your experience, and here's the delineation. It's one thing if it's your experience on the job. Let's say with a contractor or doing a specific facet of work. It's a whole different ball game when you're talking about your financial picture. Whether you're talking about how you manage your weekly budget and how you manage your long-term forecasting, right? And if you're speaking from experience, like I've made all the mistakes, young blood, listen to what I'm telling you. That goes a long way. But there's so many people who they don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, and they have all the advice in the world, and you're like, yeah, that's probably not the guy that you wanna listen to. Let's just take a look at him, right?
The
I
trouble
think
is that some of these guys are so confident. Even after, like, the first year that I got my license, these guys would be talking all this gibberish, and I was like, "That's not right. I just studied this." But they made me question myself initially because they were so confident about this wrong information, and I was like, "That ain't right," and I had to go back to double check. I'm like, "I know that's not right," but I was a little nervous to even speak up about it because this guy, he seemed like he knew it. He had it. He had all the answers. And, yeah, so that's why it is very important to get that right information out to people right away. And the other thing too is that somebody can be right for their situation, but it's not right for your situation or somebody else's. So
that's
that's
right.
important to be able to identify as well, and I've seen, maybe a lot of younger, members that are influenced, by older members that are getting close to retiring. So they get a little nervous when the market, is a little choppy and they're saying, "Hey, we're going to the fixed, fund or whatever else." And they can scare some kids that are in their young 20s and they go in it and then they never get out of it. So there's a lot of opportunity
Mm,
costs that people miss out on. And tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars with, maybe, some bad advice.
that's pointed, man. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that when I start to think about the that difference, right? You've got somebody who's close to retirement who can't, let's say, weather the storm. And then you got somebody who's a lot younger and has a lot of time on their side, or at least they should have time on their side, right? So that's a very interesting perspective. And I think that it's not talked about enough because when we're younger, we think, and I have this whole series on the podcast, like lies that we tell young people, because a lot of adults tell a lot of lies to young people.
Mhm.
And a whole litany of them. I mean, like, stupid ones from, like, Santa Claus is real to, like, you know, uh, you know, "Go do this because this is what you should do," and it's like, don't try to live vicariously through someone else. Steer them in the right direction. So we tell them a whole bunch of lies. So as an older person, you're getting ready to retire, y we intuitively believe for whatever reason, right? And we believe that adults who are older and have a lot more experience have our best interest in mind, and, this guy's just spouting off at the mouth. "Oh, my retirement funds are this, that, and the third. They've taken a hit, blah, blah, blah. You should do this." And no, they don't have their it's a snapshot in time of them talking about their financial picture based upon, whatever's going on. Never mind the fact, and this is a whole different podcast, so I'm not gonna chase this rabbit trail too much, but it's never mind the fact that if you're retiring now, when you were 20 something, the economic conditions were dramatically different than they are today. So vastly different. You could afford a house. Your houses were so much more affordable, and the wages were not nearly as stagnant as they are today. And that's a whole different podcast. But like, so the whole complete picture, right? We're coming back around to the circle where it's like, old head, I want your advice. I mean, I just that last podcast, the very first one I kicked back off after like 10 months of not doing anything. I was like, look, if you're a retiree, I want you on this platform because I want to talk to you and, like, okay, I want to hear your stories. Sure. But I also want to hear what's something that someone told you that you wish you would have listened to when you were younger. And what's something that you wish somebody would have told you earlier on? Because, there is some institutional knowledge to pass on, but finances, it can be an institutional knowledge, but it can also be one that's heavily skewed depending upon somebody's perspective and where they're at in their life, and it may not be, it may not correlate between you, the young head, and this older guy. He just may be spouting off at the mouth. There's all kinds of problems that seem to stem from that perspective, right? So,
Yeah, and you
it's
know what? It's like a media issue too. So there's media, the TV, they're chasing headlines a lot of times. They're scaring people with certain things, and you
mm,
know, and 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 they ride on some people's fear at times. So I try to remind clients that it's never as good as they say it is, and it's never as bad as they say it is either. Right. So a lot of times it's somewhere in between. But what we do is, we develop a plan early on and we stick to it. We understand that there's going to be some volatility. When we are getting closer to needing that money, we start to reduce some risk on there, so that you are comfortable no matter what's thrown at you during that time. Right. And it's important to know too that like a lot of people say they invest into the day that they think they're going to retire, but you shouldn't do that. It's what do you think your life expectancy is going to do? Because,
mm,
just look at what we had with inflation. Inflation was extremely high. If you want super, super conservative, you're not making any money, the erosion of your purchasing power. So it is important to be able to have some resources where you can talk to people that are knowledgeable to make sure that you're not taking too much risk, but enough to make sure that you don't outlive your income and the money that you have in your assets. So
okay. So let's go back for a second. When you were young and you got into this game, because both of us are getting older, right? But when you first got into this game and third generation, right? Third
yeah,
generation, I heard. Okay. What was the family dynamic like? I mean, obviously there's a level of pride there because I'm a first generation, right?
yeah.
So obviously there's some, like, I know people who are third or fourth generation, and there's a family pride there. But when you begin to, let's say, make this transition out of, okay, I've fallen, I am pursuing a different endeavor educationally, you know, what was that family dynamic like? How'd that work out for you? How'd that play out? What was the initial thoughts? Did they change at all? Was there anybody like, yeah, they were your cheerleader in the background, or
I think, just from the very beginning, like, I got two very supportive parents. Like, I think they taught me, you know, like a lot of core values and even the value of a dollar. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. And, I remember us kind of struggling. And even when I went to college, which, um, I was afraid to ask my parents for, batting cage money because I'm like, I felt like we are too strapped, even though at that point in time they started doing better. However, my brother was a few years younger, and I don't think he had the same attitude because he ended up going to like Hawaii Pacific, so he enjoyed himself. And I'm over here afraid to ask for $15, $20 for batting cage money. So yeah, I always kind of, I guess my views were a little bit more conservative on some things, and and I think I still am to this day, and I understand like when I first started iron working, and actually even before that, a summer job. I did like some carpentry work, and I was just like the gopher, what I mean, humping lumber all over the place. And I remember at that point in time, I was making $10 an hour, and I based everything on that. So, how much lumber did I have to move in that hour to purchase whatever was $10? And that's how I looked
mm,
at everything. And I was like, oh, I know that I had a stack of wood this high, 5 feet thick, that I'd have to move to purchase that, whatever, that item, you know? Um, so I was like, man, that when I put it in that perspective, I'm like, man, that's not worth it. Like it's up to $30. I'm gonna have to move that much to get that shirt. I'm like, nah, I'm all right with what I got. So
yeah.
And I think if people looked at it that way a little bit more, they might be a little bit more hesitant to waste money. And I do, speak of uh, quality of life too, though. So I think when we get people like you have to be enjoy yourself because, again, you never know, what can happen. But at the same time, you gotta, you know, plan and save too. So I got a little slogan that came up, and what I believe in, I guess is my motto is, we help you live for today, save for tomorrow, and plan for the unexpected.
Live for today, plan for tomorrow, save for the unexpected.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that. Yeah, that's if people just took that. I mean, like, we're going to explore a whole lot more. But if people just took that and they just latched onto that and they said, "You know what? I think I'm going to build my financial picture around this right here." I think they would be far, far better off than what they are right now. And 100%, 100%. That's that's so. Oh man. So going back to how many years were you in? You might have said it earlier and I just forgot. How many years were you in when you fell?
I actually it was my first year as apprentice. So I ended up, maybe like 7 months into the apprenticeship. So very early on, I did finish the apprentice school, and then a little bit later on, I ended up going back to work, really just to get the insurance because of the benefits for when I had my two kids.
Mhm.
So hands-on experience in the field, about 3.5 years or so.
Did you did you find it how was it like? Because I did this also. I didn't do it as an apprentice. I did it as a much older seasoned journeyman. But how did you find it time management navigating through like, okay, I need to provide for my family. I need to go to work. I need to do what I need to do and also take classes on the side. Because I'm often accused of being anti higher education, which I'm not at all. I am anti you have to go to college to get a good job because that's not true at all. I think that puts people on a conveyor belt towards, give me your money, right? I've got a podcast episode, or at least probably more than one. I'm pretty blessed. I actually run into a first year apprentice who is mid to late 30s, so he's looking for a career change, and we had an engaging conversation in the classroom about how predatory the student loan situation was. Can't wait to have, explore that subject. But how was your time management and how did that kind of like, what did you find it difficult? You know what I mean? Because when you start working 610s or like, you know how it is, it's feast or famine, right? So how did that work out for you?
Yeah, time management is key for everything, right? That's the balance of life on a lot of different things. Uh, for me, I got into apprentice school fairly young. It's 23, so I know there's ladies and gentlemen that get in earlier than that. And I already had a decent amount of my college courses done of my undergrad. So when I got in, I probably had like a little over of a semester left. So maybe like 6 classes, 7 classes, or something of that nature that I had to complete. So a lot of it I was able to do online, and I mean, it was tough. There wasn't a lot of time to go out there and party and do that stuff. And then, and then when I had my first one on the way, I was actually in school, or excuse me, it's actually my second one on its way. I was in school for my MBA, and that was a lot because I was ironworking, doing the MBA class, and then we were ended up building our first house at that point in time too. So it was, I don't know how I got through that one, to be honest with you. But I guess the best advice I could do is obviously work hard, do what you're doing, but I'll always like try to make time, for the people that are important. I know, like, that's something I feel like I have to do a better job of, and I'm trying to be more committed to that because it's easy to get caught up, working hard and trying to do this stuff and providing for your family. But even though you're providing for your family, you need to go back and enjoy them. spend some time, with your significant other, or your kids, your parents, you know, um, you don't have to do it like, with buddies like every weekend, but, some of your good friends, every once in a while, give them a call, even if you talk to them for, 10 minutes or something like that, just to kind of keep in touch because it's so easy to lose contact with people. Everybody's life ends up going in different routes a lot of times. And, I think it's very important to keep the good people still in your life.
Yeah, that's wise advice, man. I routinely say that what happens, and in your case, right? I'm working. I have educational endeavors that I'm partaking of, but in a lot of our brethren, what they end up doing inadvertently is I'm working 6 10s, I'm working 7 12s. I want all the overtime I can get. And the thing that I like to say is a lot of men will sacrifice their family on the altar, excuse me. It will sacrifice their family on the altar of the pursuit, not even the obtainment, but the pursuit of gathering money, possessions, and things. And then when they look back over the course of their life, they go, "Oh, my family is in a if we even still have a family." I mean, it, I was thinking about this earlier today, as a matter of fact. It's strange. When I first got in, and maybe this was the case for you, but when I first got in, I remember distinctly being asked, "Do you have a felony?" I was like, no." Like, "Do you have a DUI?" And I'm like, "No." Like, "Are you divorced?" And I was like, "No." They're like, "Well, you're not gonna make it, kid." And I thought, like, we chuckle about it, right? But we chuckle about it because it's stereotypical and whatnot. But to me, it's like, dude, what are we doing here? There's so much that we could be really kind of like talking about and doing that we should be doing and not leaning into those stereotypes because there's so many guys who's just 20 years goes by and they look back and they're like, I don't even have a family anymore.
Yeah.
And so making time for your family and the people that matter to you is super, super important. I'm glad to hear someone else say the same thing that I've been parroting for a long time now, because that's definitely something that we need to really be
And that's the
focused
part
in
that you're
on.
talking about right now is that whole little model I have. It's living for today. You have to be enjoy the people that are in your life today, in some way or form. And as you said, like it's very easy to get caught up in a pursuit of getting all these things and certain statuses and all the other stuff. But all that other stuff in my mind usually takes care of itself if you start with good behavior, you know, you know, good routines, doing the right thing, and you can do that very early on. And think about it, like as a young apprentice, sometimes that's the most money you ever made in your life. So why not take a little of it, set it aside, right? And then as that money grows, and then you start to have your family, you can take a week or two off because you actually save some money early on, right? You can start to enjoy your family. You can buy a few other things. So doing the right things, the right behaviors early on really sets the tone for the rest of your life, right? So, and that again, who's out there talking to these young apprentices? There's not a lot of people out there doing it. And, that's why I'm hoping I can fill that gap a little bit and work with yourselves and get that message out there to people.
Yeah, I think it's another thing that popped in my head this morning because I was sitting here thinking about the fact that we're going to jump on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's like there's a thing, and I just know what it is, right? It must be like people that mentor in other trades must look at ironworkers and go, it must be so hard to mentor in that trade because we I don't know what it is, man. Like we make these decisions like, and I know you know what I'm gonna go. Like you go, okay, well, I got on this job, I'm working, 7 12s for 2 months or whatever, and next thing you know, I got an $800 truck payment. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Right? You're like, come on, man, this is not what you want. You it's not something that you want to because lean times will come,
Yes.
and they're going, like you say, save for the unexpected, right? And so when I think about all of the individuals that I've met throughout my career and tried to, let's say instill some form of mentoring into their life, I'm like,
Mhm.
what really matters? Like I've had people judge me. I've had people say, "Well, what do you mean by the wealthy iron worker?" I've never met anybody that was wealthy as an iron worker. Like no iron workers are wealthy. And I'm like, listen, that was the reason I started that was because we have this monetary value of wealth when
Mhm.
in reality, like I know some miserable people who've got a lot of money. You know,
Right.
it you know, if you go home and you have a family who loves you, you have a spouse who is like just happy to see you and children, like your life is full, man. But then to flip the script and go back to the wealth part of it, I do know some iron workers from a net worth perspective who are millionaires. And it's because they made choices, wise financial decisions where they invested what they did when they were younger. Like when you're young, and I know you know this, when you're young, you have time is your friend. Compound interest and time are your friends. You have so much opportunity to take and invest small or whatever, right? And trying to get I'm so glad that you and I got linked up because what I want to do obviously is increase the, you know, exposure of the podcast, but this is such a valuable resource for so many young people who are coming into this game and it's like just take some time, listen, sit at the table, learn from two people having a series of conversations that can genuinely change your life.
Mhm.
I mean, I told my daughter, so we homeschool our kids, and my daughter's 13, and I said, "Listen, you're homeschooled. The curriculum probably has you graduating at 16/17. It's like if you'll give me and your mother 5 years, work with us for 5 years, like be intentional about going to work and saving and investing and all this kind of stuff. I will change the rest of your life. We'll change the rest of your life."
Absolutely.
And so we try to teach financial prudence and stuff as well. So I'm grateful, right, to be able to provide some kind of platform for and a resource for other people, right? Because like I see it as I'm 17, 18 years, something like that, an apprenticeship instructor, and you'll inadvertently I'll always see these, nice jacked up trucks that are, relatively new, and I'm like, dude, like your money couldn't wait to burn a hole in your pocket. Like it would have been way, 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 way better for you to save and just save for a rainy day. Just build a discipline, a muscle, if you will,
Mhm.
on saving and stuff. So, excuse me. Um. So, how many years have you been a licensed financial professional?
I got licensed in 2012. So,
2012.
yeah. So, about 13 years or so. And then prior to that, did some like independent trading for about 6 years.
Did you catch what was it like? Because I'm sure even though if you're licensed in, you were navigating through the whole thing before that. What was it like during the Great Recession? I guess they call it a Great Recession, 2007, 2008.
Yep.
What was that whole thing like?
So that was like at the very beginning when I first started like really trading and investing. And I remember I was just getting licensed at Merrill Lynch and just really like here it's a brand new career for me. So I'm excited. But going into that environment was very different for the fact that you had advisors that have been advisors for 30 years. And this is, for many of them, the worst situation that they were ever in, and having that just they were a little worried about what was going on, right? So they were like, well, and it's uncomfortable for them because a lot of their clients become their friends and some of them their families. And, here you're in charge and helping these people out with their investments. And then, some of that was completely out of the advisor's hands. Like there's nothing they can really do in a lot of situations. Like you can mitigate some of the losses, but you know, the market drops 40%. Even if you protected them for 20% of the loss, like you still down 20, like people don't feel good about it, even though that advisor probably did a fantastic job. Right. But going in there and just seeing how impactful you are and the big value that some of these advisors would give is just really almost being therapists in ways of saying, hey, listen, we know we didn't expect this, this is, not what we planned on, but we do have a plan on how to get you back and how to get you, where you need to do and how to keep you on track to, your goals in retirement and, just stay the course of this, and, you know, and then within that, like probably like my first year or so, like it's really kind of started coming back, and the market started doing better, but when I was first in there, like you still had that some of these advisors, still were like, man, like they loved their job before. And it's like they were just never under that much pressure because, they really haven't experienced something that big and for that long for a period of time. Cause it took a while to get out of those holes, and yeah, but so again, just kind of when I work with our clients too, we're always trying to have those conversations and make sure that people are comfortable with what we're doing on the investment side. And the big thing is that they don't have to know maybe how to do an investing and everything else, but understanding the big picture and and how it works and how we can get there and the goals and how to reduce risk or not take unnecessary risks and by being strategic, it can keep you out of a lot of trouble in the first place.
Mm. I would imagine that the reason I asked the question is because I would have imagined that there are people, those loud people that we were talking about earlier, right? That
Yeah.
they had a lot to say about during that time period, and a lot of it may have been wrong, or they have been ill informed. Is probably the way to say it, right? The reason I know this to be the truth is because I've run into some of those same people. They were they had thoughts about what should be and how it should have gone down and what took place and the casting blame and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, well, you're just blowing a nice smoke screen. You're not really providing any significant value to the conversation. And so what you're doing is you're effectively becoming a distraction is what you're doing. And I can just see that being the case, right? And especially from someone who is a licensed financial professional where they're just nitpicking and talking and they have all these presuppositions about a bunch of bull crap. And it's like
Now, where you saw a lot of those conversations would be actually at a union meeting, right? When you have unions, pension funds that are no longer in the green, right? And then you're having everybody has opinion now, right? And then you have everybody coming out of the woodworks and well, why would you ever do that? And second guessing everything. And um, even though local one, I think it took a hit. Obviously, I still think they did a pretty good job in protecting those assets as a whole compared to other funds, but you can still heard a lot of voices, and a lot of people just, shouting stuff from the back of the room, like what should be going on. And, uh, you know, it's a lot easier to make decisions, hindsight 2020, right? So, oh, you should have did this or you could have did that. Like, well, if you knew that, why didn't you say something before this happened, right? Like, where were you then? But, yeah, I mean, overall, I think that our fund did a pretty good job. And, we have our fund administrator. I think he's, pretty sharp on a lot of things. And I think he does try to educate people to the point that he can. I think he's very careful too. He knows he's not licensed. So, he's like, he'll give you all the information on the funds that he handles and everything. But, and then he's like, that's all I got. You have to go talk to a financial advisor on the other stuff. Um, and I'm not sure if every other local out there has as good as a resource as even that, and I still don't think that's enough. And I know that we are a lot of misconception in our own union. And I mean, even when I just go to meetings, a lot of times I just stay quiet. A lot of times I just like listen to people, and now enough people know, and they'll come up to me and they start talking and ask me questions, and I try to make myself available to everyone from apprenticeship to a retiree type deal. If they have questions, and I'll point them in the right direction in their annuities or whatever else, like, just to help somebody out. But yeah, I mean, during a period of times like that, I think everybody's an expert.
Yeah, that's so funny, man. So for those of you who are listening, or when you do listen to this, we will talk about pensions. We will talk about annuities. We will talk about, you know, certain governmental perspectives that took place during 2007, 2008. Um, that, if you ask me, helped exacerbate the problem that we experienced. We're going to talk about all of this stuff, and so you have a lot to look forward to when we get down into the nitty gritty. But this particular podcast episode is more of an introduction. Ty and I just kind of chewing the fat a little bit, giving me a little bit of his backstory, his how he where he comes from, how he got into this whole dynamic, and eventually we're going to explore all of those topics. So just to kind of whet your appetite a little bit and to say, because we really are genuine when we say we want to create a resource for everybody to be able to either watch or listen, depending on how you consume your content, that gives you, let's say, we take the jelly and put it on the bottom shelf so that you can sit here, understand, know what's going on. And if you need more, more detailed information, you can certainly get a hold of, Ty, and we can continue on from there. But this is what we intend for it to be, as a resource that everybody can use. So we will talk about those things, so just you're not going to hear it much of it. Like, we're not going to take a deep dive into any of those subjects today or tonight, but we will in the future for sure. So you don't have to worry about that. When you, when you, when you fell and then you're making this transition, were there any was there anybody on the job who, let's say, thought of you differently because you're actually looking to go a different direction? You know what I mean? Because some people, there are some people, unfortunately, that can be like that. Was there anybody that was judgmental in that direction, in that way?
No, no, because I don't think initially people knew where I was going with it because initially, I fell, I got hurt, but I still continued with my apprenticeship program.
Mhm.
Like everybody's like, dude, you're gonna be retired, you're set, you don't have to do like what are you doing here? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh man, like I made my commitment to being an iron worker. I'm gonna go finish up the apprenticeship. That's what I'm doing. Like, right. And so that's what I did. So I don't think that um, I led anybody to believe that, anything was gonna be different, that I was gonna go be a financial advisor. I was still finishing up my undergrad. And then I was already done with my apprenticeship before I started my MBA. So I don't think anybody really knew the direction I was going in initially on that. You know, uh, Pretty much the reason I went this route, a lot of it is that uh, I knew I didn't want to be a guy that ended up getting hurt, getting a little bit of money, and being that horror story that you ran through it a year or two later. So I did everything I could
Yeah.
to educate myself, right, just to be able to survive and be smart with that money that I would just receive. And then the more and more I kept doing this and learning about things, it's like, why is nobody else talking about this? So, like, oh, like this is valuable information. Why why is everybody holding back with this? Like, everybody should know this stuff, right? And that's why I was, teaching myself and learning. I was like, man, I need to help out, our hardworking people, as much as I can. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Did you see a it's a strange phenomenon, but one of the things that I have found is that if people feel like they can come and ask, so for my realm, there's a lot of guys who will call and ask me safety questions. I'm the safety director.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I'm the safety director for the company that I work for, but I'm also out in the field right now. We were just shorthanded, right? So I'll have people call me about safety related issues, and they know that. But before that, they would ask me just a bunch of different issues because and here's where I'm going with this. There's something intuitive about your personality or my personality where you're interested in expanding what you do, your knowledge base, etc. And so people can pick up on that. And so what they end up doing then is they go, "Hey, Ty, let me ask you a question." Do you get that quite a bit? Like, "Hey, let me ask you a question."
I love it.
All the
I
time?
encourage you. Yeah, that's great.
Were they doing it on the job too, though?
A little, even yes, yes. So once they kind of found out that what I was doing, and because I went back at my MBA and I did a little work again because just for the insurance for my kids, Then they're like, "Well, what do you think about this stock? What about this?" And what like, so I did get a lot of that uh at the end when I was in the field. I get a lot of it now when I go back to union meetings. I just go just to be a resource for people and everything else. And yeah, and every once in a while, I'll go up to the mic and just say, "Hey, this is going on. I know everybody might be panicking or might have this on their mind, or just let them know how things might, be affected with the news and economy and things like that." And then I always get a handful of, our members coming up to me asking questions. But in the field at the at the end, I did get a decent amount of that. Hey, what about this or what about that? And then a lot of guys will come up to me too and ask, if they're going through a divorce or something like that, like, well, what about, am I getting a fair deal? I have the pension and then I have the annuity and, they want
Mhm.
this or that, and I can run some calculations for the people, say, yeah, that's fair to do to I'd negotiate that one, or whatever it is, but, I just want to make sure that people, are taken care of and, everything's fair, as much as possible.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up. I just had a conversation with someone today about, a former member that, was complaining about a bunch of different stuff, and it was like, "Well, if you think the retirement was tough now, now you gotta split your retirement, right?" So,
Yeah.
because he was going through a divorce, and that's what I mean, right? Is that if you can wrap your mind around, and this is one of the things that I'm so excited about from a resource perspective, is that if you can wrap your mind around being financially prudent, being financially aware of where you're at, saving money, just, being intentional about what you're doing. And then on top of that, not sacrificing your family on the altar of the pursuit of money, success, fame, whatever it happens to be. Because the last thing that you want to do is get to that mountaintop and find out that you're the only one there. and it's a lonely place to be. So, when it's a nice thing to hear another brother ironworker talk about how he's wanting to be a resource for untold thousands if you know they have ears to hear. And so hopefully, right, the resource that we're going to create is something that people can build upon, and they can take it and they can self-learning, they can listen, they can use it, they can glean from it, uh, and they can mentor other people, because that's super important. So from the time, I'm curious about this too. So from the time that before you got into the financial piece, like you were pursuing this direction, if you will,
Mhm.
from the time before you started that until like even today, can you look back on before you got involved in this and think, oh, I was way off base with my thought process about finances and whatnot? Or did you already have like, lighthouses are lining up? Did you already have a path and you're pretty on the spot? How was that for you?
Uh, I mean, it's definitely a turn of events. However, I think that, with the foundation I had with my parents and a couple uncles and things uh, that my whole, I know that this work is extremely tough on your body, and your body's limited
Mhm,
for a certain amount of time. And I knew that. And I do, and I still like to work with my hands now, but I know that, as time goes by, your body breaks down. So I wanted to preserve my body as much as possible. So my whole plan, and that's why I was still finishing my undergrad, was to get into the trades, really learn how to do the job right with your hands and understand it, and eventually maybe start my own ironworking outfit. Right. So it's always business driven, as far back as I can remember. So I was still learning about investments, just not at the rate that I did after I got hurt. I was more focused on, how do you run a business? How do you, probably like what a lot of our foremen and superintendents do, like how to lay out a job site, how to, I mean, and, certain
yeah.
inventories or whatever you might need to, like, it's more stuff of that nature. Um, and then once I knew I got hurt, it's like, well, I'm probably not going to be in the field to get as much hands-on experience as I felt like I would need to be able to pursue
Mhm,
that. So that's when I shifted gears a little bit more on, hey, let's learn more about investing. And I took a lot of just stock classes and technical classes and fundamental classes, and, all different types of classes to help educate myself on the investing side of it. Then I did my own thing for a little while, and then I put my resume online after I got my MBA. And that's when Merrill Lynch gave me a call. I'm like, great. Now it's my opportunity. I can get licensed where I can actually help people. So that's when I did that. And then you get that education there. And then that's a whole different ballgame because it's not, just investing. It's learning how to work with people and their personalities and understanding their true goals, whether they tell you what they are or not, right? Sometimes you got to
mhm.
read in between the lines with people and a lot of times they're very fearful about something, but they won't tell you, right? So it's like, okay, like, so just kind of asking people what's going on, how they feel about things and really understanding who they are, as people, then that helps you understand who they are as an investor as well, and I think that was, very important. And then just, again, I just think throughout life, right, as a foreman, a superintendent, like what I didn't know as maybe a high school kid or a college kid is learning how to manage different personalities. That's a
Mm,
whole new different, ball game out
mm,
there. When you're growing up, you pick your friends or whatever, like, and they might have similar personalities to you or like the same things because that's why you hang out with them. But when you're, in the workforce and you're working with people, you don't always get to pick who you. who your partner is or who you have to work with or all this other stuff. And being able to manage that, is can be difficult. This is depending on who the other people are.
Yeah. Soft skills.
There you
The
go.
soft skills. That oh, I just it's kind of funny. Um, we think, and I've upset a few different guys over this, but like what we tend to think is that, okay, well, I've got all this, I've got 20 years of experience. Like, okay, great. Guess what? That's the base level. That's foundational stuff. Everything else gets built up upon that. How are your people skills?
Yes.
That will take you way further than the experience you've got. 100%. Now you're building upon that experience, hopefully. And if you are, great, because that's what you're going to like. That's the ideal pristine condition that you want to build on. But how are your soft skills? You want to build upon them so that as your career progresses, what turns out is that you're navigating through 15 different people and their various personalities and how they jive, and are you authentic and genuine in your approach and XYZ. Like it's a very interesting dynamic. So to hear you say the soft skills, I mean, you didn't call it that, but that's exactly what it is. It's
Yes.
how you deal with people. And if you can deal with people, you can run jobs. You can do there really is no real significant limit on what you can achieve. But conversely, and what year did you get in, by the way? What year did you get into the
Oh,
trade? Oh, 05. So I got an 02. So you probably remember working around guys who just like they screamed and yelled and
oh yeah.
cussed and fussed and all the time. And it's like, okay, well, when you're really trying to get a point across, no one's paying any attention to you because this is the standard operating mode that you exist in.
Yeah.
So no one wants to pay you any mind. But now, fast forward 20 years into the future, what I see is a what I will call is a renewed focus on leadership. And I'm hoping that we get to that point. We continue to progress to that point where your soft skills are vitally important for not just the success of the job, but also your success. And if you don't have them, you might want to start developing them because you've got a long road to toe if not. So that's it's interesting to hear you say that because managing people or I'm sorry, leading people.
There you
You
go.
manage processes, you manage policies, you lead people. So leading people is such a difficult thing. And the reason why is because people are messy. People are messy.
Mhm.
And you have to get into that messiness with them so that you try to understand where they're coming from and what they have going on and navigate through all of that. And it's a strange dynamic. So, um, interesting stuff, man. It's just a good long form conversation that I'm looking forward to having. So with the MBA, so for those of you who don't know, MBA is Master of Business Administration. I'm genuinely curious about this because I seriously considered the possibility for like 2 seconds, and then I was like, nah, I ain't doing it. Because so many people have it. But do you learn anything in the MBA that seems antithetical to like being in the trades? Is there anything that you think that isn't really jive all that much to you?
I think that you do learn lots of things in the MBA program. However, again, there's like an opportunity cost financially and your time. I feel like you can still get a lot of that knowledge and those skills elsewhere, right? I think that if you're in the right environment and you have the right people around you, I'll tell you what, I would take a great team be around that great team and learn from them over MBA any day. So
Mm,
if you're like they say, you never want to be the smartest guy in a room, right? Because who are you going to learn from, right? So,
yeah.
especially the younger you are, the you would just want to keep advancing, you want to become smarter, wiser, and then get to the next level. And then, you know what I mean? You want to surround yourself with other very bright, smart people. And if you're in those situations, you, it hits home a little bit more and it's more impactful and it's easier to absorb when it's a real life experience for you, opposed to
Mm.
reading about somebody else or experience or, hey, in theory, this is how you should do it. Seeing it is very, very different, and again, it's like apprenticeship school. You can talk about it or you can look at the book and it tells you how to tie a knot, but can you tie it? You know what I mean? Or do you have to go do it in the field a few times before you really know how to do it, right? No, you can look at those pictures like, what am I? Oh, okay, I can do it. But no, when you have to go do it in the field, or you have some guy say, "Hey, man, and you got to, connect something or tie something up." You know what I mean? It's like, oh, what was that book like again? Like, like you don't have time for that, So being in the field and doing it in that repetition in real life, you're able to do it, because you can look at those diagrams or those images on how to tie it 1,000 times and never be able to do it until you have to do it in real life.
So experience matters more.
In my opinion, I think so too. So if it's the right experience, I would take that every time.
Yeah, I think that, and the way that I usually try to explain this to someone is I go, look at, um, you bring on a new hire that's got educational, endeavors behind him. How much are the companies looking to pay him versus the ones that are 60 and looking to retire? And how much are companies offering to pay them to
Mhm,
keep them from retiring because they value their experience, right? And I don't know if this is a thing in other industries, but it certainly is in the construction in our industry, right? But those older heads, they seem, man, I'll tell you, they're you hear stories about people like, they won't hire me because I'm older or whatever, and it's like in the construction industry, what I see is I see companies who are very resistant to change, and if all of these older people start to retire, then they're gonna have to actually just completely change. So what they do is they're gasping at straws to keep these older people employed for as long as they possibly can because they don't have to have significant change with and they have that person has all this experience. So they don't have to, go full tilt change, and it builds into that that perspective, whereas they value experience, not education. Now, they're very good at double talk because they do say that they value education all day long, but follow the money. And what I tend to find is that they value the experience more. And it's a very interesting dynamic to see and play out, especially in our industry of
mhm,
all places, because you would think that it would be very self-evident, you'd be able to clearly identify that they value experience, but it's not the case because all a lot of people do is a lot of talk about, well, we value education. It's like, do you really though? Like the way that what you got going on, it seems that you value experience. And there's nothing wrong with that. Experience, you can't replace it. You cannot replace experience. And that's what the whole entire, for a matter of fact, that's what the entire industry is finding out. We have wanted people who are our age with our years in the game. All contractors, all end users want people like us on the job, but there's so few of us because of cultural narrative woven. So now we have to raise up this next generation and we have to mentor them. And part of the mentoring is to tell them, hey, don't make that stupid financial decision. Listen to me. I'm telling you, I know what you should be doing with this. You can check with, let me get you connected with a great financial advisor. don't make these rash, impulsive decisions that keep you making payments on for 3 years from now. Just sit down, calm. Let's be a mentor. You be the mentee. Let's have a conversation. And um, I think that the trades have been starved, if you will, for that particular dynamic. That where someone comes along and says, I mean, there's all kinds of old heads. I'm sure you can remember. I can remember clearly when I was younger, someone being like, "Hey, man, don't be jumping off that truck like that. You're making my knees hurt just watching you do that." And he was 100% right, because
Yeah.
now I'm getting older. I'm like, "Hey, why are you jumping off that truck like that?" But I I wonder if, when we sit and think about, the financial piece of this, if we look at how we go, we need people in the trades who are saying, "Don't leave your family behind." You know, don't make this financially prudent decision. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And we desperately need people like yourself, right? That that can that can speak truth and bring truth out of what I'll say, or what was the term somebody used one time before? It was like, oh, I know what it was. They were you were talking about the loudest people in the room. Um, I
Yeah.
had somebody call them sidewalk BAs one time, and it was the best term I've ever heard. It's like they're the sidewalk BAs. They know everything, right? Except they don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
But just ask them; they know everything. They'll tell you. So, um, we've been starved, if you will, of someone and of people in general, right? To be able to speak truth to power and educate people on, financial matters. And that's why I think this series of podcast episodes that we're going to have is going to be so valuable,
Mhm.
it that so many people can, are able to glean from, and then hopefully take it and put it into practice and change, quite frankly, change their whole life, because that's how powerful finances are. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah. So, and I think, like, I can't believe in, like, a snowball effect too with finances. So, if you get yourself in trouble financially, and if you're married, then, that can lead to fights, at home, and, your family life's going crazy because you're trying to figure things out, trying to work. Maybe it works there, maybe you have to work more hours, but then you're taking in your home life, you're bringing it to work. Now you're giving all that negative energy to the people around you there. Your head might not be in a game, and then what do? You drop something, and you can hurt somebody else, or you can hurt yourself, and so there's a lot that can happen, and it's a domino effect on a lot of that stuff that I think that gets overlooked, that can be solved if we have the education early on and put individuals, in a good situation. So then when they have families, they're in a good situation, and you just keep building on that. And I mean, that's the last thing you want to do is, have a fight at home and bring that to work, and then injure somebody else or yourself, or, it's, I think it's very important, and just, to have those people as a resource to talk to early on to keep you out of trouble. And we keep saying early on, but it's not even just early on. It's, there's so many life stages, right? So, it could be, in your 40s, 50s, maybe it's the first time you experience something, right? So it's having that resource to be able to talk to you, or buying your first home, or, you know, sometimes you're financially responsible for a loved one, maybe your parents or something like that, like have like long-term care issues, I mean, you're worried about that. And like, so there's so much involved that, you don't have to just, we don't have to just talk to somebody that just got into apprenticeship. We all need it at every stage of life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier that I want to circle back with, which was This idea that, I could get into a fight over finances, right, at my house, and then take that to work. And we have this unhealthy picture where we say, okay, and it's a joke, right? Take your feelings off, put them on the dresser when you wake up in the morning. Don't bring your feelings to work and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is we cannot compartmentalize work and life. They are two sides of the same coin, and you're that coin. You are the individual who is comprised of your personal relationships, but also the work that you do every day. And one bleeds into the other. I don't care what anybody says. That's the reality.
Yep.
And if you're financially strained, if you've made a series of, well, I'll say as bad financial decisions, then your finances are strained. And if they're strained, that creates problems. And if there are problems that you created by making financially poor decisions,
Yeah.
that affects everything. And the number one fight among couples is finances.
Mhm.
It's money. And it wouldn't it be so much better just to get ahead of the game, to be financially wise and to listen to people who have experience in this realm, and you can validate it and you can work with it and you can kind of flex through it. I just think it's far better off that we go through that path. I'd rather learn through someone else's mistakes than me having to make them myself and have to learn. It's a whole lot less pain involved. And so for those of you like listening, I really hope that you give every podcast episode that Ty and I are going to do a thorough review. Listen to it, internalize it, because we're going to be talking about some topics going forward that are so valuable, right? Some of them are going to just be, okay, well, let me just give you some information on how pensions work. Other ones are going to be, let me explain to you why you should be operating with your finances at this level. There's going to be so much value, right, that you can potentially give. And last thing I'll say about that is that it doesn't matter if you're an iron worker. It's not going to matter if you're a pipe fitter. It's not going to matter if you're an electrician. We're gonna have these. There's going to be nuances. Every pension fund is set up differently, right? The annuity funds are set up differently. But when we start talking about some of these complex discussions that a lot of people just we're busy, right? We're not casting blame on anybody. We understand that everybody is busy. Everybody's got their own life to live. Everybody is doing their own thing, and you're just trying to survive. Totally understand that.
Mhm.
All we want to do is provide you with a resource. In some ways, it's going to be very particular and very specific. In others, it's going to be very broad. And you're going to want to reach out to someone that can help you out. Ty and if you ask me, and I'm going to sit here and, shameless plug, I think you ought to reach out to Ty. I think you ought to have a conversation with him if you have these discussions, you have these questions internally. And so when we start, going through the motions and going through everything that we're going to be looking at and talking through these, keep all of this in mind. Don't just like let it go in one ear and right out the other. Instead, internalize it. Be intentional about your finances. And I promise you, you can change the trajectory of your family. You really can. I remember Chris McLean, he's a district council president for the Pacific Northwest now. At the time, he was the business manager for Seattle. And I remember him talking about it was a Native American, I believe, that they had got into the program. This guy had never left the reservation before he became an iron worker. Right? And he goes, he just came back. This was several years ago, but he just came back from Hawaii, where he took his whole family on a vacation to Hawaii. And he did, and it was able to do that. Why? Because at some level, he practiced financial discipline in his life. and was able to save and all this other stuff to then be able to take his family members on a trip to where a lot of people would like to go, right? And newsflash, some of y'all listening could very well benefit and be able to do the same thing. If you're willing to listen, to glean from what we're going to say at this podcast. All right, Ty, you have first off, thanks for coming on, man. I'm so excited about what we've got going on. But do you have any final thoughts for this podcast episode?
I just, again, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's very, very important to me to be able to get this, really just trying to provide people with education and resource. Just a couple days ago, it was actually I call it my life day from when I fell to do life, and that happened on October 26th. So I was like, okay, great. It's been 20 years, so it's I'm seeing my dream actually become a reality by working with so many union, you know, members and unions themselves and BAs and business managers and really starting to get that traction to work with that clientele and the people that I care so much about. So it's a blessing to be able to be on your podcast and reach so many people and potentially help a lot more people by being on your platform. So I'm very excited about it. So I guess know, you know, the biggest takeaway that I hope people, get from this is that, that they can use, both you and I as a resource, but also just, creating good habits, doing the right things early and often, and, setting a good foundation, so that you can be, in a good financial situation, later out on in life and really throughout life. Right. And again,
Yeah.
That model that that I believe in so much is living for today, save for tomorrow, planning for the unexpected, right? So that I think that's what our podcast is going to be about, and we'll touch a little bit in each of those areas, through each podcast. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully everybody that listens to it enjoyed it and had something that they can take with them.
Yeah, I'm really excited, man. I am. I'll end with this little story. So I met Ty at the what ironworkers call the Impact Conference, and so it was February of last year. And so I'm sitting here we're down at we're down at this little area, right, where people are just sitting down eating some food and drinking some drinks, and I'm having a conversation with I don't even remember who it was now, but I started talking about some financial stuff, and I was like, when you start talking about fiduciary responsibility, and Ty was like, did somebody? I heard that, and he he come in, and he was like, hey, I heard that, and so
Yep.
because there's so few people, right, that
Yeah.
are aware of what what the fiduciary responsibility is of some people. And that's another topic. I'll tip my hat a little bit, right? But that's another topic that I want to talk about is the responsibility that the most popular journeyman or the business manager has on his plate. The business manager of 50 years ago is not the business manager of today. It's drastically different. There's so much more that you've got to do, and you have to cross your T's and dot your I's, and you have to know about finances, and it's just going to be a wild roller coaster of podcast episodes and topics, all things financial. And then we'll have conversations about some other stuff too. So looking forward to it. So,
Absolutely.
dude, we have literally, I'm not even joking when I say this, we have been trying to kick this off for a long time. He's busy, I'm busy. Right now I'm working 610s. He's in negotiations, and then we thought we had it scheduled, and then the microphone was jacked, and it was like, what on earth, man? And so I'm super excited because this, a series of financial podcast episodes could be on every locals website, and I don't just mean ironworkers. It could be pipe fitters. It could be electricians, because we're going to be talking about some things that very well, correlate between the two of us. And if just one, to be honest with you, if just one person's life has changed through all this, then if you ask me, it's been worth the effort and time put into it. So I am super excited to see what, how this is going to continue to grow and to progress. So Ty, thank you for your time. I'm so grateful for your time coming on here, man. It's great.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. All right, everybody, as always, stay safe out there. And I will see you on the next one.